1 Samuel chapter 18, verses 6 to 9. As they were coming home, when David returned from striking down the Philistine, the women came out of all the cities of Israel, singing and dancing to meet King Saul, with tambourines, with songs of joy, and with musical instruments. And the women sang to one another as they celebrated. Saul has struck down his thousands, and David his 10,000s. And Saul was very angry, and this saying displeased him. He said, "They have ascribed to David 10,000s, and to me they have ascribed thousands. And what more can he have but the kingdom?" And Saul eyed David from that day on. Many commit sin because of the perceived pleasure that sin gives them, though the pleasure is temporary and deceptive. Sexual immorality is attractive to some because of the temporary gratification it gives. Theft is attractive to some because of the material things they gain. Pride is desirable to some because it boosts their ego and gives them prestige before their own eyes. Although sin may provide temporary, false pleasure, sin deprives one of the true joy that only comes from having a genuine relationship with Jesus. Only Jesus is the source of true joy. But there is one sin that not only robs one of true joy in Jesus, but brings no happiness at all. And this is the sin of envy. Envy is defined as resentful longing aroused by coveting another's possessions or qualities. One writer even called the sin of envy as the unhappy sin because it makes the sinner miserable, leaves him feeling inadequate and lacking. Envy also leads to obsession, leads to resentment, anger, and depression. It also makes one live in constant fear that someone is better than him, and that leads to insecurity and anxiety. I am not saying that one should go for the sins that give them false happiness. Sin is sin, whether you derive pleasure from it or not. And let us not forget that the wages of sin, and this sin, is death. In our verses for tonight, we see the effect of envy in the life of Saul. Instead of serving God who placed him in that position, grateful for the blessing of being king, having the opportunity to glorify God in his position, envy was eating Saul up from the inside. We see in 1 Samuel 18 that he was envious of the success and the popularity of David. The people were shouting, "David killed his 10,000s, and Saul killed his thousands." And Saul became very angry, and verse 9 tells us that from that day on, he kept his watchful eye on David. Saul was so insecure, and he plotted to kill David several times. In envy, he hurled a spear towards David. He hunted David in the desert to kill him. Envy also affected Saul's relationship with his own family. David was married to Saul's daughter, and you can just imagine the tension between father and daughter. Saul's son, Jonathan, was very close to David, and when Jonathan tried to defend David before his father, Saul hurled a spear towards Jonathan, his own son. Envy also destroyed Saul's relationship with David, who was loyal to him. Envy clouded Saul's mind so that he could not see that David's victories in battle would bring honor to him as king. And worst of all, Saul lost his fellowship with God. Instead of focusing on what God was doing in his life, envy made Saul a very unhappy, anxious, bitter, and insecure person. Saul failed to realize that his kingship was a gift from God, and no one could take that away from him without God allowing it. Had Saul trusted God's plan for him, he would not have been anxious or envious and insecure with David. We all experience envy. There are times that we too may be envious of others. The work they have, the luxuries they enjoy, their achievements, the relationships they have, and we end up comparing ourselves with them, and we start looking down on ourselves, and we become insecure and miserable. But praise God that we can learn from the life of Saul and see how extremely dangerous it is to let envy get a foothold and allow it to grow in our lives. The story of Saul teaches us that we too should be confident in who God made us to be, and we stop comparing ourselves to other people and focus on what God is doing in our own lives, always grateful for what He has already done for us, and trusting Him that He has a wonderful plan and purpose for each of us. So let us avoid envy and jealousy by not focusing on ourselves or others, but keeping our focus always on Jesus. It's all about Jesus. Good night. God bless us all.